Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Intro to Reading Levels, a session that was presented at Children's Institute 2026 in Schaumburg, Illinois.
Welcome to what is probably the very, very last session. So we would in advance like to thank every single person in this room for sticking it out. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's the last session. We made it. And then we all get to go hear the great Lois Lowry and then go back to our shops with a lot of amazing ideas and things to implement. And we hope to do that here as well. So, of course, before we get started, I have some housekeeping. Stop me if you've heard this before. Obviously, we can't talk about dividing up the market. We can't talk about boycotting. We can't talk about pricing. Yes? Yes. What's that? World domination. That's right. Fair. We can talk about world domination. Please, if you would like to see the slides now, or even when you go back to your bookshops, you can scan the QR code up on your screen for that. So I'll leave it up for a little while. It's also in the app if you have that downloaded. We would absolutely adore your feedback. I know it's hard. I know it's tiring. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it really is how ABA gets better and improves their programming. So we would really appreciate that, but only if it's nice. Recordings, this is going to be recorded for later dates. So if you missed anything or want to share it with a colleague, please do. And please silence your cell phones. I just did that because my sister is texting me and she should know better. And if you have questions, even throughout or at the end, please wait for the inimitable Chelsea, who is sitting in the back of the room. Thank you, Chelsea, to come around with a mic because it's being recorded so that everyone can hear. Good? Great? Awesome. All right. We are going to start with some introductions and some general framing of this because the four of us really do feel as though this, the title of this session is a wee bit misleading, and you'll find out why in a moment. We are going to talk about understanding reading levels and then navigating those conversations that you might have in your bookshops. We are going to be talking about different hybrids that are helpful for kids in building their reading confidence. We're going to give you a couple of very practical takeaways to take back to your bookshops. And then, of course, we will have time for questions. We have some objectives. We're going to be sharing a little bit about different reading level systems. And then we're going to immediately jump into some practical strategies. And then we are going to hit it home. I know we will be preaching to the choir, but we've had some conversations about maybe other booksellers in your shops that might not think that graphic novels and hybrid texts are very valuable, and some ways that you can share that understanding and knowledge with them. So, interesting thing about the four of us is that we all have backgrounds in education. My name is Lori Barber. I am a former teacher, elementary education. I taught anything from 2nd to 6th grade for about a dozen years, and I am now currently a bookseller at the wonderful Silver Unicorn Bookstore in Acton, Massachusetts.
My name is Rebecca Crosswhite. I am a former educator. I had my early childhood education certificate and my elementary education certificate. So I've done everything from birth to 5th. So 4th being my favorite, just so you know, 4th graders are the best.
5th graders are the best.
Anyways, I am the co-owner and children's buyer for Rediscovered Books in Boise, Idaho.
I'm Susie Parsons. I also was a 4th grade and 5th grade teacher years ago. And after getting my PhD, I've been a professor at Oklahoma State University for 25 years, where I'm the literacy education faculty, and I teach the courses undergrad, master's, doctoral in children and YA Lit.
My name is Natalie Eberlein. I am the children's book buyer at Fabled in Waco, Texas. But alongside that, I am also working full-time at a K through 12 school where I am currently an administrator. I have taught 3rd and 4th grade there. I've been the assistant principal of the grammar school, and right now I oversee all their arts programs. So kind of all over the place in terms of education, as well as buying kids' books.
All right. We wanted to share that with you because part of what we're going to be doing when we talk about reading levels is give you the confidence to talk to customers that may walk in. So we wanted you to know that we're trying to bridge the gap between what you know as booksellers and what we know as educators. So that's why we hit you with all of our educational background. Expectations. We are really, really going to hammer home the idea that reading levels are not children. They are a tool, and they are one minute part of the whole child. We are going to be making sure that you have some ideas to implement, and we want more than anything to be able to lift up and empower kids and support kids to be joyful readers and lifelong readers. We're going to start with, what are reading levels? And we'll talk briefly about each one, starting with Natalie and Lexile levels.
Great. So a common reading level indicator that you'll hear about is a Lexile score. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that term tossed around. Perfect. It has colors associated to it, but primarily it has letters associated to it. Now, this is truly just a temperature gauge in that for a given age level, it assesses what is a beginner reader for a second grader, what is I can't see the slides very well, but red, yellow, green, darker green, but thinking about a stoplight, where are they compared to their peers for a certain age level? Now, this is truly just, I like to think of it as a thermometer. It tells the teacher where they are currently at, and it is something that is used to measure progress. So you can assess a student over the course of the year and just see, are they making progress? That's the primary way that Lexile scores are intended to be used, is as an independent measure to measure one student's progress, not so much as a comparison point between their classmates and things like that. So really it's, again, just charting, is a kid progressing throughout the year? And it uses different letters of the alphabet as well as comparing to their grade level to see where they're at.
And another one you're going to hear is the Fountas and Pinnell levels. That one is a good bit different from Lexile's because where Lexile's kind of uses a traditional algorithm of the length of words and the length of sentences and those kinds of things. The Fountas and Pinnell group looks at 10 characteristics of text. And again, they try to correlate roughly, different grade levels. So they go A to Z, and then they have Z plus for adults. But what's interesting to me is throughout the Fountas and Pinnell materials, they continually say children should not know their letter. Parents should not know their letter. This is for instructional use only, but that's not how you see it carried out in schools.
Mm-hmm. Oh. All right. I'm going to talk about the one that we used when I was teaching, and it's AR. How many of you guys have heard of AR, Accelerated Reader? AR involves taking a assessment, and it kind of gives you a level. It's also usually got a color and a number associated to it. And that identifies which books that reader should be picking up and reading. And then they go to the computer and they take the test to see if it checks for the understanding. But really what it checked was if you remembered the color of the shirt of the main character. Like, it was super ridiculous. I don't have a very good opinion of it, if you can't tell. But we did use it. And so that was one of the things I had to use. The biggest, hardest thing with that one is that you have to buy the tests. So if you're in a low income school, the really cool books that the kids want to read, we didn't have tests for. And so we did workarounds. We made tests for them and stuff, but it really was not an equal, fair assessment for children.
Mm-hmm. But you might get a pizza party at the end based on your AR points.
Yep.
Right?
And if you don't get your AR points, then it's public shaming.
Yeah, so you have to stay in at recess.
And if you get 1 million words, you get to be on the word wall at school. Mm-hmm. So, are you picking up where we're going with this? Great. There's a lot of confusion around different levels, mainly because Fountas and Pinnell, for example, is very subjective. It's done through a teacher filter, so you really don't know where the child is in an instructional level, which is where they should be taught, the level at which they should be taught, versus an independent reading level. So those nuances aren't explained to either parents or students because it's used strictly by teachers. Parents are trying their very best to support their children as readers. They are up against more information, distractions, than ever before. I did hear in a previous panel this morning that there does seem to be a move toward more analog entertainment for for kids, for young readers. But that said, we are still just, we're Sisyphus, like pushing that boulder up the hill every day. And then obviously assessments aren't the end all be all. When a parent walks in, it is not the first thing that should be coming out of their mouth. So having said all of that, chat at your tables. And if you're by yourself, if you could join another table, that would be really amazing. We would love to just have a little bit of interactive turn and talk. What are your experiences with customer interactions that you've had around reading levels or experiences personally with reading levels? Go ahead and take just 1 minute to turn and talk.
Have you ever gone on the Ingram and clicked on the Lexile level and seen what books it pulls up?
Yep.
And how wide ranged they are? It's just ridiculous.
Well, and there's the nightmare of things like with that you can get a book with a really high concept, but if it's like scientists in the field series and they've got those pictures, it's third grade level. You can't read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even Lexile level 2 has adult directed, which is a totally different, so picture books are adult directed because they're intended to be read to a child most of the time.
Right.
Which is why they have a higher Lexile level than a chapter book sometimes.
Exactly. But then you get it in the hands of people who A, think that is the reader, and B, don't know any of that.
Yeah.
Which
had
is
an
also
experience.
administrators.
Yeah. When
Not
you look
present
at
company.
Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, that Lexile level will show as 6th grade on Lexile, but in 4th grade on Fountas and Pinnell.
Yeah.
It's maddening.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and because you're looking at very different things. One's an algorithm, one's looking at certain text characteristics. And
All right, let's wrap up in 5. Finish what you're talking about in 4.
Clearly teachers of
Yep.
I know. How many of you are educators or have a background in education? Coming back in 2 and 1 and 0. So Chelsea has the mic. And, where did Chelsea go? Emily has the mic. Hi, Emily. Thank you. We'd love to hear a couple of share outs for anyone who is game. Right. We'll start right over there in the corner and wait for the mic, please. Yeah, we said that too.
One of the things we talked about was when you have a very vivacious reader and they're coming in and they're like, I've read this and this and this, but then they're, they're reading, they've gone through 1 and 2 and 3 level and they're ready for chapter books, except they aren't because they're 7 and they don't need to be going into middle grade chapter books. So kind of figuring out where they don't want to listen to Spot go up the hill and they don't want to listen to Bob be friends with Amy, but how do you stay away from then giving them number the stars? So just kind of navigating that.
Okay. Anyone else? Did I see your hand up? In the purple?
We kind of talked about like parents will come in and say, hi, like, here's my kiddo, they're a Lexile, whatever. And we're like, that means nothing to me at all. And, you know, the parent is kind of looking for the exact like area to go. And we always just kind of turn to the kid and we're like, what did you last read that you really liked? Because we're in that world and we know what those mean. And that's like so much more helpful to us. But the parents are like wanting a thing. They want like an answer to what that means. And like, there is no translation.
Yeah. And their child is not a math problem.
Yes. And their kid is also like, I don't like that anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to read it.
So that's a wildly perfect segue. Because why is all of this important to a bookseller? All of this level conversation? It's actually not. So, spoiler, levels are lame. They're inconsistent. And the whole goal of us is to be able to hone into what a child wants to read and what a child will be successful and joyful at reading without worrying about a letter or a number or a color. So how do we handle these very delicate conversations? Let's talk about it. So an 8-year-old kid and their grown-up come into the kids section. The grown-up is holding a paper from school that tells you that the child is a Fountas and Pinnell. Oh. The grown-up wants recommendations for the kids' next read. What do we talk about in that scenario? Natalie, we'll start with you.
Great. This is a scenario that I'm sure you all have experienced in your shop in some way or another. Maybe not with the level itself, but in, you know, the grown-up really wanting the perfectly right reading level for this kid. And the conversation at that point is really to be directed with the reader, with the kid. So it starts with asking questions. And I love Purple Sweatshirt that you mentioned this. You really put it so well of just saying that, like, that's actually not what we're here for. That's not your job. And that's okay. You're right. So just having those conversations with the kid, and what is something that you've loved to read recently? What's something that you hated reading recently? And then where do we go from that? Now, that can be a little bit tricky when you have the grown-up who is also usually the one carrying the wallet, right? That is needing perhaps to be assuaged that this is the right book for that child. But that's where really we are building the love of reading. So how are we, asking questions that get our reader to be really excited about the book that they're reading, because they're far more likely to purchase that book if they're just like bouncing in their seat. They can't wait to read it. So asking questions, and then, asking questions of the child with the occasional glance up to their grown-up, right? So see how the grown-up is responding to the questions that you're asking, especially when that comes to the different sections around the store. So knowing when to speak to the grown-up versus to the child. And then depending on the situation, you might have a parent or whoever that's asking, oh, but is this too hard for them? Is this too easy for them? And that's where I love to just look at the kid and open the book. I pick out Cornbread and Poppy and we start flipping through together. And I say, there's so many pictures on this. I love looking at them. And there's some words too. How does this feel? Do you want more pictures on your pages? Do you want more words on your pages? We see kids when you hand them a middle grade and they're like, oh my gosh, this is all words, right? The wall of text. And just being able to really look at those cues from the reader and then going from there.
Fantastic. Oh. Did I go?
I jumped no, that was me. That was my bad. Number of words on page, images, illustrations, like I just talked about, as well as other things, the length of chapters. I love just telling my booksellers often what are some of these really short chapter books, because that's where those emerging readers are really going to latch on and feel successful. So finding the Catherine Applegate that they know that they can read 6 chapters of their whole chapter book in the 10 minutes that they read, and like, wow, they are so excited and they feel like successful readers. And that's ultimately, as a bookstore, our goal. We love our schools and we love that they're teaching our kids to read. That's not what the bookshop is for.
Right. Susie?
I I think one of the really important things for parents to understand, and we can teach them in this very gentle way, is that instruction is important, but we know, lots of research, I can share it if you want to, is that readers do better academically. And we're talking about volitional reading, volume reading. Look at SAT scores, for instance. Readers knock the top off of them. They also learn in other ways. But I think we get confused equating reading skill with reading. And talking to parents about the importance of the joy of reading in terms of how it supports being a human being, but also how it supports learning is really important. And that there are things that we are working to get teachers to do better that we can do to support that joy of reading, that include things like reading aloud, talking with kids with books, and making books a social event, this kind of thing, that the research shows this matters. And let's move away from, can you read? Do you have these skills? Do you have this level? To, you need to have this big picture of wanting to read. Teresa Crimmen calls it the will and the skill. And if we have the skill, but no will, it doesn't matter.
That's a great quote.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay. So I taught in a school that had a lot of English language learners. And so the reading skills were emerging, but they were definitely not, in English on par with some of the other kids. So it was really, really important for us to find books that these kids could read that wasn't a baby book. So making sure that you can find those books that are at that level that those kids are willing and wanting to read. It doesn't matter which AR level that is. Mm-hmm. So you just need to be willing to find those books. My daughter just graduated from 2nd grade and she just got diagnosed with dyslexia. She really, really struggles. Her comprehension, dude, it's out of this world. We read books all the time. We do audiobooks. They have these books in the library that has a little machine in it and she can hit play and she can follow along as the book goes. And that is just like amazing for her. It is so hard for her to sound out and to read a sentence. Once she does that, she doesn't have any idea what she's read. But if I'm reading to her, we're reading Fablehaven right now. Like she is comprehending everything, but she can't read right now to comprehend. So making sure that if you have a parent come to you and they're like, my kid's really struggling, what can I do to help them? Look at those different formats that you can use. Those hybrid books that have less word count on them, you can go into like books in verse. I mean, the Alone is an amazing book. And it's fat. It looks fat, but it's not because it doesn't have that much text in it. So keeping in mind those things that you can do to support those readers who want to feel like everyone else, but they just need to have it in a different way. So recommending the graphic novels, recommending the books in verse, recommending the audiobooks, all of those things is reading.
Just kind of building on what she's saying, I think it's helpful for parents to understand that format doesn't dictate difficulty. Right? And that in this multimodal world, there's a lot of difficulty in navigating different modes but we like to tell parents at our center all the time that reading is here. It's not here. So whatever you're doing, if you're thinking about it, that's reading, that's comprehension.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I wanted to add on as well, when we're talking about digging in and asking the kid questions and recommending books, the thing that the kid is obsessed with, sharks, for example, you know that this child is going to have a great deal of background knowledge in sharks. Mm-hmm. They have seen all the shows. Shark Week is their favorite week of the year. All of the things that make them an expert in sharks. So guess what? They have the motivation and the background knowledge to maybe be reading books above their quote unquote level or in a different section of your shop in your nonfiction sections of your shop. Like they might be going for the bigger shark books. That's incredible. Good for them. The other part of that is because so many of our nonfiction books have robust text features that sometimes those books may be a higher level on the back, but because of the text features, the photographs, the diagrams, all of that, it is going to be more accessible to a student or a young reader, especially if they have that drive and excitement and joy about all things sharks. Okay. So we're going to dive in and dig in a little bit deeper to formats and how different formats can build confidence in young readers.
And how you can talk to parents about it and have them understand that these are good things and what you can like defend the whole ideas behind them.
Absolutely. You were, one second, you were all at the lunch, right? Just before. So when David Wiesner was talking about the nonverbal student who didn't really want to, or the student who was having trouble with writing and then opened up Tuesday and could not stop talking about it. And his paraprofessional was taking pages and pages and pages of his thinking. That's reading. Mm-hmm. That's reading, and that is expressing your thinking about reading in a non-traditional way. And I almost don't like that word non-traditional because the non is negative. We need to stop looking at kids in a deficit way. What can't they do? Look what this kid can do given the right circumstances. That's amazing. It's such a success story. So when we talk about formats and we talk about all of these things that we're going to be digging into, they are all reading because like what Susie said, it's all in here. It's all in here. It's wonderful. So the educational benefits of graphic novels and other heavily illustrated text, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I always have these parents that come in and they're like, graphic novels. They just read them so fast and then they're done. And I'm like, oh, well, do they read it again? Because they do. I like to say to the parents, most of the time, well, no, all the time, graphic novels have a higher vocabulary than your regular chapter books because it has the visual support for the kids to be able to interpret the words. It has social emotional learning because they're watching these characters on the page and learning what it looks like to be jealous or envious and giving them that it's just all of those words to describe themselves too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going along with that, you have to have so much critical thinking to understand that you're shifting between modalities. You're reading different kinds of information. And in the real world, we read so much more than print, right? And especially today. So very often it's the graphic novel that can get at some really complex themes that this child might not be able to lift with other kinds of text, but can definitely grow here. Really powerful stuff. Adults need to learn how to read them. So sometimes you can teach the adult, this is how you read the graphic novel.
Go ahead. And I did want to get to your question as soon as we have a mic for you or comment, either way.
Roseanne knows a little bit about books.
I know. We're gonna get schooled. It's gonna be great.
If you have that highly anxious parent, especially of a 4 to 7 year old, and they're really struggling with reading, a gentle reminder to get their vision and hearing checked, especially because so many fewer children are vaccinated. We will see higher rates of visual and hearing loss because of that. So just a reminder to say, because there's no amount of good books and there's no amount of good instruction that helps the child that can't see the page. And because they're so little, they don't know what they're not seeing or not hearing. So they can't tell you, but just a little nudge in that direction, because that is a problem that will grow until we figure out the vaccine thing.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing with dyslexia too, is my child has been a bookstore baby since she was born. She has had that environment that we tell people that they need to give their child, and she still struggled.
Yeah.
And I said, that's something's going on. So let's push that, help the parent push that to the school and say, help me figure this out.
I think something that's so important in this too is that when a parent or whoever is coming into the shop and is so concerned about reading levels, that's coming from a place of their own anxiety, right? It's knowing that reading is an essential skill and that their kid is, maybe struggling, maybe not, but as a parent, they want to care for their child. So there's so many ways that I like to encourage parents that they can be helping their child in their literacy skills that don't necessarily mean that the parent becomes a reading teacher, right? Hopefully these kids have fantastic reading teachers at school and in any other spaces, but there's so many things that parents can be doing that are going to help. And I think as booksellers, reminding parents what those are goes such a long way. So reading out loud to kids, no matter how old they are, is going to exponentially help their reading level. Talking about the movies that you watch is going to help their reading level. After you watch a movie, talk about it. Ask them what happened. Ask them to repeat the plot back to you in, like a normal conversational way.
Wait, tell me again.
Yeah. Draw a picture together and talk about it while you're doing it. And whenever I have these conversations with parents, they look at me like I'm a little nutty and they are wondering but that's not reading. And we need to help them bridge that gap and say all of these skills are part of what makes a good reader, a part of what makes someone who can comprehend because they know how to observe, a person who understands how stories are told in the arc of a story, all of these things that happen just by living, and participating in the world around us. This might just be naming things in the grocery store, right? That is a part of a reading skill, is identifying and putting a name to something. All of these things are things that parents can be doing with their children that are going to help their reading skills without a parent having to feel so anxious about their reading level, right? And I think just turning that a little bit into the things that they can be doing that they already know how to do and really encouraging them in that.
One of the things that I do as a bookseller is I kind of out myself a little bit to the parents. And I say, because this is a true story. I went to Starbucks so much when I was a young mom that my daughter at age 18 months would look at that logo and say, "Mama, coffee?" And so as a demonstration of your child is thinking about visuals from such a young age, and it gets a little bit of a laugh. It makes you seem a little bit more human and connected as a parent. So if you're able to kind of give a little bit of yourself, to the parents to help reduce their anxiety about their kids, go for it. It's really helpful, to be able to connect. So a word about graphic novels from the great Jarrett Lerner, who, is absolutely right, who did all of the research, or gathered all of the research out there on graphic novels and comic books. And this is something great that you can print out from the slides, or you can go to Jarrett's website and get your own image and put it up in the comic or graphic novel section of your store to share with your parents. 53.5 rare words per thousand. Wow. If that is not thinking and comprehending at a high level, I don't know what is. Your average prose book is 31 words. Okay. It even beats adult books.
And parents love those numbers. If you give them solid facts, they can feel good in whatever they choose.
Mm-hmm. So parent concerns. We talked a little bit about them. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the things that you might be able to directly hand them that can help address those concerns.
I think we've said a lot of those things, that the joy of reading does translate to academics, but it translates to a fulfilled life, a healthy child, confidence. When kids can see themselves in books, that's absolutely essential for seeing that they matter. And when they meet other people, expands their horizons. And, I think a lot of these are up there, but for me, it's dig in there with them. Many, many, many years ago, Frank Smith said, to learn to read, you have to join the reading club. And a lot of the adults I work with learned early on not to want to read. And what's interesting is a lot of my college age students say it's when AR hit that they quit wanting to read, which I think is very interesting. But encouraging them to get in with these books and read together and talk and do all of these things and explain how important that is, that sparks their love of reading too. It brings them back into the reading club fold, and it helps the child immensely.
And I think if you were just in that talk that we were listening to, Jerry Kraft said it very well. Like, he wasn't a reader because he didn't see himself.
Yeah.
Nothing reflected who he was as a child. And so that is just like so important to know, that you need to have those books where the children can look at them and see themselves, because they're not going to want to pick it up. If it's some will, but it's still important to have those books in your library or in your store that reflect those kids.
Yep. Have an inclusive and diverse children's section. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it really is worth saying. We have one question comment over here, Chelsea, if we could grab the mic. Sorry. Oh, it's okay.
Oh. And this was just for my own, somebody else might want to know, but for the AR, when you mentioned that kids stopped wanting to read because of the AR, the accelerated reader is what I assume.
That's correct.
Yes.
Is it because my mom taught kindergarten? I taught first and second, but I never used AR. We didn't use that program, but my mom did. She taught kindergarten, and I kind of remember her talking about it. She went back in the day. She really liked it, but is the reason why kids didn't want to read with accelerated reader, did it kind of make them compete with one another? Was it like big, like showing where you are? I think that's what I remember.
That's one part of it, but I can tell you a bunch more. I have my sophomores write reader autobiographies, and over years and years of doing this and looking, that's a theme that comes up again and again and again. And so a lot of it is that agency was taken out of their hands. You can only read these kinds of things. I didn't want to read those kinds of things. A lot of it was the pressure of the test. And for me as an educator, the thing that worries me the most is that we give kids a picture of reading that is not reading. Reading is trying to figure out what somebody's going to ask you. Reading is not something that you ever do again in the same book. Reading is a competition, and boy, I suck, so I don't want to do it. I want to get down there. Reading is, I'm not reading for ideas. I'm reading for levels. For instance, I love the Scientists in the Field series. And there was a book a while back, Stronger Than Steel, about how scientists are using spider webs to create all these amazing things. And it talked about DNA and all of this kind of stuff. And my son wanted to read it, and I had opted him out, but I looked to see what the AR level was, and it's a 3. Because there are lots of pictures. There are photographs of scientists doing this work, right? So there are so many things there that move, and it's not just AR, but that move readers away from understanding that the nature of reading is that we are meaning makers and that we are choice makers, and that this is for joy. It's not something that we're passive in, it's controlled outside.
Jamie's in the back.
I volunteer a lot in my son's school, and it's a bilingual school, and they use AR and STAR because it's available in Spanish. However, the rest of the school district uses Lexile, which is because we're the only
So
bilingual
that's fun.
school. So
Yeah.
that's real fun. So I'm just curious because now, long story short, the school district no longer wants to pay for AR and STAR. And so
It is really expensive.
it's very expensive. And they tried Dibbles. So I'm just wondering, are there any other assessment like programs that also assess in Spanish?
There are Fountas and Pinnell books that are in Spanish and English. So, however, that program is very subjective because it's quote unquote a one-on-one conversation with a student after they read a passage, right? And that passage can be in English or in Spanish.
DRA did. Yeah.
In DRA? Okay. That's good to know. What else, Suze? You know more than me. I've been out of this for years.
The biggest picture is how schools are using these. And a lot of it is because it's coming down from up above, from administrators, even legislators who are not understanding what it does and why we use it. So they're equating a reader with a number, and that's why we're frantic to get that number, right? So with any of these, you really need an educator who understands all of the things that go into it. All of these are measured in a different way, right? So what does that say about that reader and what do we need to do? And it's not a replacement for understanding the nature of reading, what strategies good readers do, and for watching readers and seeing how they grow. But in a lot of schools, top down, they've said, this is your first step, get them in a level, and then we're going to label them and move. All of these are for instructional use only, however, and once it gets communicated to a child or a parent that you are a whatever the label is, then we've really truncated growth as readers.
And joy.
Which
And I think all of us recognize that in an instructional setting and as teachers, these can be useful tools in that you might have, I think a classic example is students that have either very big personalities or very, more shy or reserved personalities. And sometimes in a normal classroom setting, it's hard to tell where they're reading. Teachers need to know where their students are reading, and these assessments can be useful for that. We are really just seeing how that assessment has been taken out of its context and then is, being used in bookshops where it really is not meant to serve.
Are being used as a goal rather than informing where we might start and what we might want to do.
Yeah, right. I know. I see the hands. Just give us just maybe 2 more minutes to run through the rest of this, and then we will have a really good conversation, I promise. First, before we even move on, I did gather together some of the books that we all saw here this weekend that many of you have in your bags that are going to be great in terms of different formats for your readers. For example, Maddie Frost's Really Ruby is a highly illustrated text. It's wonderful in pictures and in words, and it's one of those crossovers, right? You've got your graphics, you've got your prose, and then in between are these highly illustrated texts. That is a great one to have on your shelves to guide parents to. Also, I don't know how many of you got it because I heard they ran out, but coming out on October 27th is This Is a Door by David Nayeri. Wow.
Yeah.
I was blown away not only by the variety of formats, but also the playfulness of it, also the blank parts on the page. It's not a novel in verse. It's more of a novel in shape poem format, and it is incredible. I will eat my hat if it doesn't win an award. And then also Megan E. Freeman's novel in verse, The Secret to Belonging. She's done Away and Alone, and the third one's coming
And this
out.
one is more for the older reader.
Yeah.
So if you have older struggling readers, it's a really good one.
Absolutely. I always feel like Alone was, hachette for the kind of modern day kid.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, wordless picture books, David Wiesner's wordless picture book, Catherine Otoshi does amazing wordless picture books. So many that will really, up the comprehension of young readers, even if they are not accessing text and prose.
All right.
Okay. Moving on. We're skipping that. Hand selling best practices. Let's talk about remembering who we are and what we do, what our role is, and what we really don't need to worry about as booksellers. We don't need to worry about their reading level. We need to know who they are as readers. So we talk to them. We ask them questions. We might even be kneeling down at their level or doing a crouch or pulling up a chair or something like that. So they're not intimidated by this stranger asking them all of these questions. Our job is to suggest incredible, engaging, wonderful read alouds. Now, all of us in this room are phenomenal at that because we love kids' books. What about your booksellers that don't? How many of you have in your store booksellers that are afraid of the kids section and never go in it?
Yep.
So, tips on what we should do with those guys. Natalie?
Yes. Now, your booksellers might not like this activity. Personally, I loved it. It was a lot of fun on my end. But I, went back through my email and I pulled all of the very broad or oddly specific requests that I received for suggestions for kids' books. I'm sure you all have some of these, right? Of these, like, I don't know this 8-year-old, but I need a book for them. Or my 8-year-old loves 42 different things. Find the perfect book with all of them. Anyway, I made a list of all of those, and I, of course, had my booksellers go and find at least 2 books for each recommendation, for each prompt. But the kicker here was that it had to be from distinct sections of the shop. So within kids, but they couldn't pick 2 middle grade novels. They had to pick maybe 1 middle grade and 1 graphic novel, or 1 middle grade and 1 activity book, an early reader and a paperback picture book, whatever it might be. But in any hand selling opportunity, I've just found the most success in taking people to different sections where the books are displayed in different formats and where the books are a different reading experience, because you're able to get so many, you're able to engage a reader in a different way by showing them that all of these count as books, but also that they can be really drawn in by something different. And maybe because your first suggestion didn't work and now you're taking them to another one. And that's a good thing too.
Yeah, it's a rule in our store that you have to read a picture book a day. That has nothing to do with like reading levels and stuff. It's just getting them familiar with what we have in the store. But I book talk all the time to my booksellers, because if I can't get them to pick up the book, I can give them the wording to sell that book. So just book talk every book that you like love, and pretty soon your booksellers are going to be selling that book too.
It is really interesting. I'm sorry, Susie, do you want to go?
Yeah, I was just saying I'm not a bookseller, but I think it's so important that all adults understand that picture books are not just for early readers, and explaining that to everybody. Yeah.
Yes, be picture book evangelists, be kids book evangelists. Your enthusiasm for kids books will rub off on your fellow booksellers. I started pulling books that one example, The Yellow Bus, when it came out in digital format and we got a fold and gather of it as well, it blew me out of the water. And so I was down there up on the floor talking to all of my booksellers about this book. And then it came out and it was just going and going and going because they got excited about it. Same with Buffalo Fluffalo. You read that book aloud to your fellow booksellers and they are going to then want to read it aloud to customers because it is just so fun and so engaging.
I eat poop.
Yes.
Like, if you haven't done that as a read aloud to your group, you need to do that.
And then to piggyback a little bit on what Natalie said, one of the things that we had a lot of fun with as booksellers is, play the game where you find a topic in more than one format. And I had a bookseller come back with Mars by Stacey McAnulty, Rover and Speck from the early reader section, and A Rover Story by Jasmine Warga. And what a great compilation for a young reader who's obsessed in learning about Mars or space. Next on, yes, we're going to talk a lot about read alouds and share our love of them with our fellow booksellers. But in terms of customers, what do we do if a kid goes, yeah, I read this, or reads the back and says, I'm not interested in this?
Okay, let's look for something else. Like it is, and you can usually tell when you go to hand a book a kid or a kid a book and they go, not this one. All right, moving on. Like you can do that reading. It doesn't have to be your first suggestion. It could be your 10th suggestion. You can give them a pile of them and say, go sit down and look through them. Like,
yeah. I do like loading a kid up with a pile of books and leaving them alone. It's really fun. I don't know if any of you do that, but it really is a lot of fun because they will pick 2 or 3 things. And then the parent is trying to get them to only choose one. It's the best problem to have.
I like to warn them ahead of time. And I say, okay, I'm getting a basket because I already know that I'm going to get you so many books to look at. And their eyes go a little wide because they're like, okay, our arms are going to be full of books. We're going to have a huge stack. And that's cool. Like that's exciting to have a huge stack of books. And I've had another little kid just watch while I do that. And then they walk up to me after and they're, can I get one too? Yes, absolutely.
That's fantastic. And the second thing, remember to take away, this is a welcoming experience, obviously, for our families. The grownups that come in with young readers might not have a lot of book knowledge, but we do. Everyone in this room does. And if you don't, especially about a particular section, I'm really weak on manga. So I make it a point to learn and read and expose myself to that format of reading because you know who loves manga? Kids. So you have to.
Well, and to know which ones you can hand a kid and which ones you should
which
probably
you can
not
hand to a teenager. Yes, exactly. But familiarize yourselves with those different formats. Share the different formats with your booksellers who might be afraid to tiptoe into the kids section. And remember that your job is joy. And with joy comes confidence in reading and loving books. And that is contagious in your bookshops. So we are, I think, right on time. Yeah. Now it's time for Q&A. And now we have lots and lots of hands. Let's start with, right there. Yes, go ahead. And then blue shirt is next. Sorry, I'm doing that by clothes.
Hi. Sometimes I have interactions with parents where you're recommending books and then they don't end up buying anything because they're concerned that if they give their kid a book that's too hard, they're going to get discouraged and not want to read anything else. I wonder what you would say about that or what your advice would be.
I would start with encouraging to read together, but also help parents understand that all readers start something and go, yeah, no. And that it's okay to set a book aside and try for something else. And that we learn from that. Well, what was it about this book that didn't work for you? Let's figure out something the next time.
And encouraging reading in your space, right? And saying like, oh, maybe just read the first chapter while you're here. And hopefully they're hooked and they want to take it home. But yes, you read a chapter, I read a chapter sort of thing is really great. Or a family book club, like calling it a book club. Super fun too.
I'd say all of that.
No, wait. Turn around right there. Sorry, Chels.
So one of the things that happens sometimes at our store is that parents come in with a variety of opinions about reading levels, but they've been told that their kid is required to read a book above a certain Lexile. And you try to find something and you can watch the joy just drain out of the child. And I'm just kind of curious how you combat that like loss of joy that you can watch happening when it is a requirement from their school that like obviously you can't in that moment fix the way the school is being run.
Why not? Just
be like, let me talk to your teacher.
Well, so there's on Ingram, You can look at Lexile levels. They have it on Ingram, and you can find a book that's in that Lexile level and click on Lexile, that number, and it will give you a whole list of books that are in that Lexile level that are very broad. And you're like, how is this the same reading level? It's not. But so that you can find that huge variety of choices that can be something, because you will have picture books on there. You're going to have chapter books on there. You're going to have graphic novels on there, because it's a really weird way to check, like, for understanding the way they do the Lexile thing.
But if that's a requirement, then use that requirement to your advantage. You know, you have an you have a wide variety of things at your fingertips. And if that's their baseline, then you are going to be able to find something through Ingram that's at their baseline. I would also say, I would dig in a little bit deeper, and I would ask the parent or the child, is this something that I have to be reading independently? Because then we're going back to, you read a chapter, I read a chapter, I'm reading to you, we're reading to each other.
Yeah. And I think they need to understand that most of the time when teachers are saying, here's the level, it's instructional level. It's not meant to be read independently. And, you know, helping parents understand that is really helpful, because again, all they know is a number or a letter, and they don't understand what's behind it.
We can go back there.
Okay. Yep. Oh, up here and then back there. Just because space.
Hello? No,
Yeah, we can hear you.
I often have families get stuck at the leveled reader's spinning rack, trying to understand how that relates to what they're looking for, and it doesn't. And they don't even seem to relate to each other from different publishers.
No.
And I don't know. Do you have any
publishers in the room? Could we just match that?
The numbers on the book have to do with the format of how the publisher lays it out. They can make those books cheap because they're pre-laid out to a certain number of characters per line, a certain number of lines per page. So that's what that number reflects. When I talk to parents, I'm like, this is not kindergarten, first grade, second grade. That's not like 1, 2, 3 means. It just means 2 is harder than 1, and 1 is harder than pre-whatever, right? It is broadly, one is harder than the other, but that's what the numbers reflect, is the actual physical layout of the book.
So it has nothing to do with reading level.
But they don't, it isn't about the reading level, and they don't check the reading level, and most of them don't have an education background to know the difference. So it is a little quirky, but it is how they make the books inexpensive.
Right.
Because they're pre-laid out.
And that's one of those things
valuable.
where you can just give so pro tip for parents, this is how this works. Orange hat. Sorry, I would love to know your name, but my eyes don't see your signs that well.
So I was going to share 2 points. The first point was, I think that parents need to understand all of this information. So writing op-eds or letters to the editor, to your local newspaper, could be an effective tool. So a couple of months ago, I wrote an article for Essence about what it means to be a Black bookstore, and how the work isn't always about selling books, but it's more about a purpose. And that brings me to my second point around, what is the purposes of reading? So for African Americans, our history of being excluded from the reading process, now fast forward to contemporary times, when young people are saying, or when they're saying reading levels, this, that, and the third, I'm like, wait, that has never been our purpose of reading, to be proficient. It was actually to be an advanced reader. So if you look at people like Alfred Tatum, who talks about enabling text. So a book can be like, for example, a biography can have a very complex vocabulary in it. Although it might seem like it's a first or second grade book, a kid in middle school or even upper grades in elementary school can read it and get a lot out of it because of the vocabulary and because of the depth of the story. And so one of the things that I always do with parents is say, hey, look, I ain't even gonna lie to you. I have no idea what none of those reading levels mean, even though I do. But what we really need to do is help your young dreamer basically understand how this book relates to their dream. And if it doesn't, I don't care what they read. They can read something that has the highest level, but if it's not speaking to who they want to be or even a value you want them to embody when they're outside of your house, because kids be acting crazy. Anyway, but I think that should be the main driver when we're selling a book. How does this speak to your child, whether their personal interest, dream, or something that you want them to embody? And if it does not, then this isn't a text for you, no matter how complex or how easy it is.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
It is 3:30, so it is time for us to wrap out. However, I did see a couple more hands, so please come on up if you have questions. We're here for, we're all going to be at Lois in a half an hour, but we wanted to thank you very much for
the survey.
ending your time. If you need to get in touch with us, our emails are out here, and please rate this session on the app, write us feedback, all of that kind of thing. We love you. Go back to your bookstores and be the amazing people that you are.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!